The day I walked away from 200 million. My father called me reckless. My mother burst into tears. My brother Luke laughed and said, "You'll come crawling back before the end of the month." They didn't understand. What was a fortune to them felt like a prison to me. And in that moment, I was finally breaking free. I'm Nathaly Caldwell. Today, I go by Naty Foster, taking my mother's maiden name. 6 years ago, I was the face of Caldwell and Co, a Fortune 600 powerhouse built from scratch by my paternal grandfather. Today, I watch that same company crumble, while my own empire rises from the ashes. But let me take you back to the beginning. Growing up a Caldwell meant living in a gilded cage. Every decision in my life was made for me. Every step, choreographed with surgical precision, designed to mold me into the perfect heir. Boarding schools, business classes, Ivy League degrees, education, carefully curated, friendships, closely monitored. Even my hobbies had to be deemed appropriate for someone of our status. As my mother liked to say, carry yourself as if you were born to lead. And I did for years. I excelled at everything they expected of me. I got into the Sloan School of Management with honors, held pristine internships at all the right places, secured corporate board seats before I could legally order a drink. I was the model Caldwell daughter. Or at least, that's what they thought. Every charity event, every meeting filled with forced smiles. I would lock myself in my room. And there, in silence, I would map out my future. I wrote business plans, created ideas that could change the game, projects that could pull Caldwell and Company out of the paper era and push it into the future. But every time I tried to present something, every time I showed a draft, a vision, a proposal, the answer was always the same. "That is not how things are done around here," my father would say, without even looking me in the eyes. When I asked them to review my proposals, the look was always the same. Caldwell and Company had thrived for 3 generations by doing things the right way. My brother, Luke, 2 years younger and infinitely more comfortable playing by the old guard's rulebook, sat on the other side of the boardroom table with that rehearsed smile. "Let the adults handle the business, Nathy," he would say, with that irritating condescension. The breaking point came 3 days after my 26th birthday. It was the most anticipated board meeting of the year. I had spent months crafting a detailed proposal for a complete digital transformation. The truth was obvious. The company was falling behind. We were losing market share to agile startups and companies that understood the present. My plan was bold: update the systems, automate processes, open new sources of revenue. All to ensure the survival and growth of Caldwell and Company in the digital age. I remember it like it was yesterday. Standing in that imposing room, surrounded by dark wood, leather, and inflated egos. I watched my father flip through my presentation, page by page. And then, without lifting his eyes, he said, "We do not need to reinvent the wheel, Nathaly. This has worked for decades." That was the moment I knew. Either I stayed, or I flew. He flipped through my meticulously prepared presentation with a barely concealed sense of boredom. "Definitely not," he said, snapping the folder shut with a dry, disdainful sound. "We are not going to risk our name with these wild internet ideas. Caldwell and Company deals with real business. Tangible assets. None of this digital invention nonsense." "But father," I tried to argue, "the market is changing. If we do not adapt now." "Enough, Nathaly." He cut me off with a firm wave. "Discussion over. Luke, please present your plans for expanding our real estate ventures." While my brother began his presentation, a parade of the same recycled ideas as always. Something inside me finally broke. I looked around the room, the board members, all aging, unmoving in their seats. The old portraits of the company's former presidents, covered in layers of dust. The heavy curtains blocking any glimpse of the vibrant, pulsing city outside. That was when I understood with painful clarity. Nothing would change. It would never change. At least not in there. That night, I made the decision I had been quietly shaping for years. I wrote my resignation letter not just from Caldwell and Co, but from the entire life they had mapped out for me. I would give it all up. The trust fund, the inheritance, the high-ranking position in the company. I was ready to start from scratch. This time on my own terms. The next morning, I arrived at my father's office before the market opened. I walked in without knocking. I am out, I said, placing the envelope on the table. He did not even look up from the newspaper. Please, Nathaly, stop the dramatics. You cannot just run from what you were born to be. That is exactly what I am doing. Watch me. This time, he lowered the paper. For the first time in a long time, he truly looked at me. Are you serious? Completely. I took off the family ring I had received at 18, the symbol of the legacy they held so dear, and placed it beside the letter. I am giving it all up. I am going to build something of my own, my way. He laughed. That dry, disdainful laugh echoed in my mind for a long time. Good luck without the Caldwell name behind you, he said. You have never earned a cent without the shadow of our family. Then it is about time I learn. My mother's reaction was exactly what I expected. Tears, emotional pleas, a speech about family loyalty, legacy tradition. Luke was more direct. He showed up at my bedroom door while I was packing, leaning on the frame with that usual smug air. You are going to crash and burn, he said. You will blow through everything you have and come crawling back, humiliated. And when that happens, guess who will be in charge? I looked right at him, the family's golden boy, the perfect son who never questioned anything, never dreamed beyond those luxurious walls. Maybe, I replied. But at least I will have the courage to try. That night, I left. With 2 suitcases, a bit of money I had saved on my own, and freedom in my soul for the first time. My investments were modest, at least by Caldwell standards. But they were mine. And they were enough for the first step. I changed my name. Rented a small apartment in Harlem, the kind that would give my mother a heart attack just by looking at it. And it was there, between thin walls and creaky floors, that I began to build my dream. Lumen Digital Strategies. It all started in my living room. I took on small contracts, helping businesses build an online presence, rebranding, modernizing processes. There were many sleepless nights, coffee in hand and faith in my heart. Each satisfied client brought another. Every mistake became a lesson, the kind of lesson that would never exist in the mahogany rooms of Caldwell and Company. My family, as expected, stayed true to form. They laughed behind my back about my little digital business. And at other times, they tried to convince me to come back, as if all of this were just a phase. My mother's Christmas card always came with the same note at the end. Your office is still waiting for you here, in case you change your mind. Luke made a point of sending me Caldwell and Company's quarterly reports. Results, charts, profits, all carefully highlighted, as if to say, see, you made a mistake. But I never replied. I did not even open the attachments. My energy was elsewhere on Lumen Digital's growth. I hired brilliant people who shared my vision. We developed our own tools to optimize operations, cut costs, and speed up processes. And most importantly, we built a culture that celebrated the new instead of worshipping the old. By the end of the first year, Lumen already had 50 team members and was beginning to stand out in the tech world. By the 3rd year, we were leading digital transformations for massive companies. Demand grew so fast we could barely hire quickly enough to keep up. And then came the news I had secretly been expecting for a long time. Caldwell and Company was in decline. The company that refused to evolve, that dismissed every proposal for innovation, was now stumbling over its own rigidity. They were stuck with products the market had already left behind. Caldwell and Company's business model was collapsing. The structures that once seemed unshakable were giving way. The stock was plummeting. Even the most loyal clients, decades-long partners, were jumping ship. Faster, more modern competitors were swallowing up the market that once belonged to us. I watched it all from a distance, almost in silence, as my father stubbornly clung to the formulas of the past. As Luke's grand real estate ventures, once praised as visionary, turned into financial burdens. The company my grandfather built with sweat and vision was now sinking in pride and slowness. Those same board members who had once dismissed my ideas with disdain? Now they were running around, desperate, watching their wealth slip through their fingers. But I was not just watching. I was preparing. Lumen Digital had become something far greater than anyone imagined. Maybe greater than even I had dared to admit in the beginning. Now, our company was worth 3 times more than Caldwell and Company. And every decision still went through me. No boards to please. No family dynasty to protect. No tradition to hold back my vision. And when Caldwell's stock finally hit rock bottom, When Caldwell and Company's stock reached the lowest point in the company's history, I knew it was time. I began my move carefully. Through a network of intermediary companies and quiet acquisitions, I started buying shares. The market was too busy watching Caldwell's fall to notice the movement. The purchases were discreet, spread out, made by seemingly unrelated entities. No one noticed except Luke. "Someone is buying us." He stormed into my father's office, waving reports in his hand. "Look at this. We are losing control of the company." But my father, always too proud to admit weakness, just shrugged. "Nonsense. That is impossible. No one would dare attempt a hostile takeover of Caldwell." But Luke was right. Day by day, share by share, I was taking control of the company that once tried to control my every move. And those same board members who had mocked my modernization proposal? They were about to find out just how badly they had underestimated the wrong person. That Caldwell and Company boardroom, where I had been silenced years ago, was about to see me return not as the rejected heiress, but as the owner. The room looked exactly as I remembered. The same dark wood panels, the heavy curtains, that air of outdated grandeur, as if time had stopped there. But this time, when I opened the double doors, I was not the daughter seeking approval. I was the CEO of Lumen Digital Solutions, owner of 61% of Caldwell and Company. "What is she doing here?" Luke almost shouted, jumping up from his chair. "Security. Sit down, brother," I said, calmly placing my folder on the table. "I am in charge now. The security team reports to me, as does everyone else in this building." My father's face went pale as he looked at the papers scattered on the table. I had made everything clear. Records of the stock purchases, the vote transfers from board members, the documents proving Caldwell and Company was now under my control. "This is impossible," he whispered, eyes fixed on the papers. "Just as my grandfather built this company," I said firmly. "I am here to do the same. With vision, determination, and the willingness to adapt when the market demands it." I looked directly at the board members, still in shock, and continued. "Speaking of adaptation." I paused, making sure everyone was listening. "I believe you all remember my digital transformation proposal, made 5 years ago. The one that was discarded without even being read." Old Mr. Harrison, who had been on the board since my grandfather's days, cleared his throat before speaking. "Miss Miss Foster, perhaps we should discuss this in private." I cut him off, without hesitation. "Everything I have to say can be said right here, in front of everyone." I looked at the documents I had spread out on the table. Caldwell and Company is now a subsidiary of Lumen Digital Solutions. And yes, there will be major changes. That is when Luke, furious, slammed his fists on the table. "You cannot do this. We are a family." I let out a dry laugh. "Family?" I said, almost in disbelief. "Was it family when you mocked my dreams? When you dismissed my ideas? When you said I would come back empty-handed?" I said with a faint, bitter laugh. "Well, it is different now." My father tried to interrupt, with the same old posture. "We were just trying to protect you, to protect the legacy of Caldwell and Company." I looked at him, gesturing to the financial reports spread across the table. "Protect the legacy? Look at what that legacy has done for you," I said, pointing at the stats. "The stock is worth a quarter of what it was 6 years ago. You lost major clients to competitors who know how to innovate. The Caldwell name means nothing in today's market. This is revenge," Luke scoffed, with contempt. "Destroying everything our family built." I stared at him, remaining calm. "No, Luke. This is not revenge. This is salvation," I said firmly. "I am going to do what I tried to do 6 years ago. Bring this company into the modern era." I gave a slight smile, knowing my moment had arrived. "And the only difference is, this time, you cannot stop me." I signaled, and my assistant began handing out folders and documents to each board member. "What you are seeing now is only the first phase of what is coming for Caldwell and Company. The digital transformation is underway," I began with confidence. "We will implement Foster Digital's proprietary software across all divisions of the company. This will optimize operations and open new revenue streams." The board members began going through the presentations, their expressions gradually shifting from shock to growing curiosity as they saw the real potential of the plan. Even Lucas, though trying to hide it, could not conceal that he was impressed by the well-structured strategy. The choice is simple, I continued firmly. You can adapt and be part of Caldwell and Company's future, or resist and become part of its past. Because change is coming. My father, watching everything, looked conflicted, his face reflecting a mix of emotions I could not decipher. And we, your family, who always trusted you? He asked, searching for an emotional connection. I took a deep breath and looked him straight in the eye. I am offering you the chance I asked for 5 years ago, I said firmly. The chance to modernize, to grow, to build something bigger than any of us imagined. What we inherited is just the starting point, I said, looking at every face in the room. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? The silence that followed felt heavy, loaded with years of tradition, family pressure, and unfulfilled promises. It was as if all the past arguments were still echoing in the walls of that room. After a tense moment, Mr. Harrison, the oldest board member, cleared his throat and broke the silence. I vote in favor of Ms. Foster's proposal. One by one, the other board members followed, some hesitantly, others with quiet enthusiasm. Even Luke, after long seconds of internal conflict, finally gave a slight nod, resigned. My father was the only one who remained silent, watching me with an intensity one had not seen in years. He seemed to be trying to see who I had become. You planned all of this, he said slowly. You left, built your company, waited until we were weak. It was all part of your plan, wasn't it? I learned from the best, I replied. Firm but without hostility. And you tell me, wasn't that exactly how Grandpa built all of this? A faint smile, almost imperceptible, crossed his lips. For the first time, his eyes softened. He would have been proud, my father murmured. Maybe not as much as I am right now. The transformation of Halden and Company, the new name of the former Caldwell and Company, began immediately. The Foster digital teams went to work, updating systems, training employees, and implementing changes that should have happened long ago. The market reacted with enthusiasm. For the first time in years, the stock price started to rise again. Surprisingly, Luke dove into the changes. If you cannot beat it, better learn how to play, he said with a quiet laugh. When I found him watching an online programming course in the middle of the afternoon. I still think you are kind of crazy, but maybe just a different kind than I thought. My mother took longer to accept it all. But on the day I returned to the former president's office, now redesigned, full of smart screens and integrated interfaces, she appeared at the door, with a look of both confusion and affection. All of this, I simply do not understand, she confessed, nervously wringing her hands. These systems, the technology, this thing called the cloud, it is all a mystery to me. This whole digital world is still an enigma to me, she said, looking around with a hesitant smile. But I know how to recognize when something works. And what you have done here, it is bigger than anything we ever dreamed for you. That is exactly the point, Mom, I replied gently. I had to dream this on my own. The year that followed was full of transformations no one could have predicted. The former Halden and Company was now operating as a division of Foster Digital. Our company had established itself as a leader in innovation and technology. The stock value skyrocketed, tripling. The same clients who had left returned, drawn by our advanced and adaptable solutions. After many conversations and some resistance, my father finally agreed to step down as CEO. He took on a more symbolic role as an advisor. My generation's time has passed, he said in the official announcement. It is time to acknowledge that the future demands a new way of leading. The old boardroom was completely transformed. Where there were once dark panels and heavy curtains, there were now interactive screens, an open and collaborative space. The past made way for what was to come. The curtains, once always shut, now stayed open, letting the vibrant city light fill the room. My grandfather's portrait was still there, fixed on the wall, but now, it shared space with photos of the company's new achievements, our boldest digital projects, and an identity that had evolved. One night, as I was leaving work late, I found Luke leaning against my car. As I approached, he started walking beside me. You know what the craziest part of all this is? He said with a half smile. You were right. Not just about the market, the innovations, but about needing to break away from what was imposed. About following your own path. I spent years repeating what I was taught. Never stopped to ask if it still made sense. And look where that got us. I looked at him beyond the facade of the perfect brother, the shaped executive. For the first time, I noticed a bit of disillusionment, but also something new. A spark of doubt, and maybe hope. It is never too late to start over, I said calmly. To figure out what really matters to you. And to build something that is truly yours. He was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. I am thinking of taking some time off. Maybe travel. Do something of my own without a manual. I smiled. That might be the best decision you have ever made. Luke told me about his new idea. To launch a tech education program to prepare the next generation of sterling employees for the company's digital future. Of course, if the CEO approves, he said with a playful smile, reminding me of the curious boy he once was, before everything got swallowed by legacies and board meetings. I think it is excellent, I replied sincerely. But do me a favor, teach them to always ask questions. Especially when they hear, this is how we have always done it. At the next meeting, held in our new collaborative hub full of screens, natural light, and ideas flowing freely, I looked around the table. It was an inspiring mix. Familiar faces who had learned to adapt and newcomers bringing fresh energy to the company's strategies. Members of my family, once trapped in traditions, were now starting to see the value in what is built with vision and courage. As I listened to the lively, forward-thinking discussions, I thought back to the night I left everything behind. And I realized I never truly abandoned my family. I just had to find a new form of belonging, one that included me too. There are many types of wealth. The kind that is measured in numbers, and the kind that is born when you believe in yourself. When you decide to create something with purpose. When you prove that sometimes, the most unlikely decision is the right one. My father, once my biggest opponent and now a quiet guide, met my eyes from across the table. A slight nod. A silent exchange of understanding. In that moment, I realized what my heart had known for years. True value is not found in inheritance or figures. It lives in the courage to let go of what is known, the boldness to start from scratch, and the wisdom to understand that sometimes you have to give up everything to build something much greater. As I closed the meeting, I took one last look at my tablet. Foster Digital's stock had just hit another record high. And Holden and Company, now a symbol of reinvention, was being cited in articles as an example of successful transformation. The future had already begun. And this time, we were the ones who designed it. And my family, after so long resisting, had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the best way to preserve a legacy is to transform it. Let's move forward, I said, opening our newest innovation proposal. The future is not going to knock on our door. We have to build it. Sitting in the same room where, years ago, I had been dismissed, I felt the weight of irony and smiled. I had walked away from a fortune worth 100 million, only to build something now worth billions. But more than that, I had done it my way. On my terms. With my vision. And in the end, proved that the decision once seen as insane was the only one that ever made sense. The name Caldwell still carried weight in the market. But now it meant something new. Something bigger. And maybe that was my greatest achievement.